Welcome, AI Explorers. We're excited to start the year off with a new video. Today, we're going to talk about the history of AI. Let's talk about first, can machines think? And that's where we're going to start the conversation. Jacob, what do you think? Can machines
think? I mean, I think, so you and I have looked into the history of artificial intelligence, and that is the question is can machines think? And I think that the answer is today, not yet. I don't think the version of ChatGPT that we've been dealing with or even these image generators that do this amazing job, I don't think I would describe what they're doing as thinking.
Yeah, I completely agree with that because they're inert until someone comes along and puts something in there. They're not consciously moving through the world like we are. So we're giving them an action to perform, and then they perform that action based on the information that they have.
Is that how you would define it, though? Like they operate independent of humans? Because I could envision a world where a robot has a set of programs, like I'm thinking of like a custom GPT or something like that, where it has a set of instructions, and we're like, well, that's a cleaning robot. It goes along the streets and cleans the streets all day. It doesn't necessarily need an input or instructions. That's just what it does. Is it thinking at that point?
Well, I mean, come on, think about a Roomba. Is it thinking? No, it's
I guess not.
You turn it on, and you let it navigate your house. It bumps into a bunch of walls until it figures out the floor plan, and then, it then takes that knowledge that is learned, and then uses it to continue that process. And the same thing, I mean, I've seen videos where a robot goes into a restroom and cleans the restroom. And so it's been given some basic knowledge about cleaning restrooms, and then it goes and figures out the rest.
So I think that's interesting because even growing up in the 80s and 90s, for me, 90s, right?
We're going to go 80s and 90s. Yes, we're old.
80s and 90s. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, there were some cool movies, some fun movies out there about robots, and they were all sentient. So looking back, all of those robots should have had artificial intelligence or would have needed to have artificial intelligence. So there's a difference between a robot, which is just a certain kind of machine, and an artificially intelligent robot, right? And I wonder if we'll distinguish between like big robots that are emotionless and if whether or not they'll be regarded as sentient or just the ones that we interact with on a daily basis. Sorry.
No, I think you're totally right. I love the reference back to those movies because that's what a lot of people have their concerns with AI in general is because they see the T-800 coming to, scrape humanity from the globe, where not a lot of talk is given to the droids of Star Wars, who really haven't lifted up against the humanity that they serve and are part of. And they're obviously intelligent in some way. I mean, R2-D2 is given these quirks and this kind of funny nature, as well as C-3PO and kind of that neurotic thing. And you look at other writings like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where that robot in that one was depressed and had those human feelings involved. So we have so the variety of types of thinking in robots in popular culture.
You bring up a couple of things. So the next robot that I'm thinking of is Data. And then my children are watching Ninjago, right? So one of the ninjas, Zane, is a robot. No, sorry if I spoiled that for anybody. Yeah, but at one point he has an emotion chip, right? And he turns it on and off. And so one of my thoughts is, is thinking the requirement for sentience and human rights or robot rights or whatever, or is it emotion? And then to pop culture you on this. The movie that I was actually thinking about was not like Terminator and destroying robots. I was thinking of Short Circuit. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah. Assemble, Stephanie. Reassemble, Stephanie. You crushed the grasshopper, kid.
I wanna watch that movie. It's been a long time, but that was a good one. And it's interesting because the bad guys want to use the robot for military deployment, right? I forget.
They do.
But
they do.
That was the bad guys' goals for robot, but the good guy goal for robot was just, to to let the robot
A
be
companion.
itself. Right. Yeah. Be a
Right.
friend. So fascinating view on that.
You talk about data, going back to that, and you talk about the ethics or the nuance of robotics and AI in general, and the consciousness level, and where they become a sentient being or whatnot. There's a great episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where it's called Measure of Man, and they hold a court about data and whether or not he is a sentient being. And because they want this one professor to take data apart so he can look at his Partron network and try to figure out more data. And Picard the writers did a good job of getting Picard to show the point of making, if we create millions of data, is that not a race? And, coming up with the idea of what is the ethical nature of that and what is that going to be?
Well, and I remember that episode has some fantastic moments because I think Riker is tasked with taking the opposite view and arguing that Data is not alive, and he turns him off on the stand, which is it was a really effective kind of emotional moment because the characters, if you watch Star Trek, you get invested in Data. He's by far a fan favorite for young people.
Oh, yeah.
Super cool character. And when Riker turns him off, you just feel betrayed.
You do.
And now I want to jump to our topic, which is the history of AI. And I think this preamble is appropriate because AI started with imagination, right?
It did. For sure, because it's invested in all the science fiction that we have.
Yeah.
We're exploring that concept of what is life and how is it that we think and why is it that we think. And so we're kind of projecting that into this synthetic or artificial intelligence.
Right. And so, a lot of times life will follow science fiction in a very real way. And I don't think that we would have, a push for some of these things if not for like the works of Isaac Asimov and the laws of robotics and stuff like that. And so these ideas are out there. And then data scientists and computer scientists today are working to bring a lot of these things to become a reality, but without the works of Star Wars, without movies, even though we think of sometimes of, Short Circuit, who even remembers that, right? Like, but like, yeah, me too. But, our kids will never see the movie Short Circuit unless I make them watch it, which I may do after this. But it's these imaginations of what the future could be that turn it into what it will be, and you think like Back to the Future, they went in the future to 1984 and we were far more advanced than we are today. It's just interesting to think about.
Yeah. And I love this topic, and you and I both, we did a little bit of research on the history of AI coming into this conversation. And it's fascinating to understand how long AI has really been a consideration. So 1956 or the 1950s, it really began to take some thought into the realm of reality. And it's funny, what we've found is just the computing capacity hasn't been able to allow for it until kind of now, really. What are your thoughts about what we've researched in that particular vein?
Yeah, so the basic gist of it is, right, so these ideas evolved out of popular culture, and then there was the Dartmouth Summer Research Project in Artificial Intelligence, where they actually coined the term in 1956. And so these researchers came, and everybody pretty much came together and said, yeah, this is possible. It's going to happen eventually. And this is in 1956, and you think we only got ChatGPT like a year and a half ago? And so it's interesting to think about why it took so long. And yeah, processing power, like, it's funny. I recently bought a thumb drive because even though you rarely need them, I had a need recently. And the smallest thumb drive I could find was 128 gigabytes, right? And it cost me like $10, right? But I remember in 2005, when I was getting back into the undergrad program, I bought a 1 gigabyte thumb drive, the biggest they had, right? I was like, oh, I'm going to need this. And it cost me like $100, right?
Yeah.
So $100 for 1 gigabyte of space versus today where it's $10 for 128 times that amount of space. That's probably one of the biggest reasons that this is happening now, and it couldn't happen earlier.
Well, I'll share an incident. So my son, several years ago, there was a field trip to Huntsville, Alabama, where they have the Huntsville Space Museum, and you can look at all the NASA stuff. And so we walk in there, and the tour guide is talking to the kids, and she looks up at this huge ring from one of the initial space rockets that took astronauts to the moon. Okay. And
Amazing.
it's like 4 stories big in diameter. And she says, does everybody have one of these in their pockets? And she holds up a smart device. This is a couple years ago, and most of the kids did have a smart device, and she's like, your device there has more capacity, more computing capacity, more storage, more everything by leaps and bounds than that ring that took men to the moon. And it's just fascinating how our technology, Moore's law about how the technology is going to double over time and allow for these capacities. It also brings to mind Tony Stark when he creates the new element that allows him to use remove his palladium core, and his dad, had created the idea for the element, and Tony Stark comments at the end, "Oh, here you are, these years, and still taking me to school."
Which is interesting. We stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Like, I don't think that you can get around that when it comes to artificial intelligence. This has been building for a very long time. It has taken, and I know a lot of people focus on science, but I think that we should give a shout out to the arts and to people who have created just ideas, because that's how it starts, right? Like, it's a combination of all the ideas that are out there to bring something
Certainly.
like this.
Well, like you said at the very beginning, it is based on the idea of that fanciful, futuristic desire. What does the future look like from the artists, be they written artists or visual artists?
So you mentioned something, though, that I think is interesting. So one of the things we read is in 1970, a particular AI researcher said, from 3 to 8 years, we will have a machine with the general intelligence of an average human being. And this is 1970. People are thinking, okay, in 8 to 10 years, we're set, right? And I've been thinking that for years, since Tesla's all like, we can self-drive. And I'm all like, man, self-driving cars on the road any day now. And it feels like we're not getting there. And I think that there are important legal and regulatory guide rails to keep people safe, right? I think that that's important work as well. It can be frustrating because you're like, we know the tech exists, but it also is important to have this human process to like think through all of this stuff. But the crazy thing about artificial intelligence is it feels like we're moving at a breakneck pace. And it's curious to see how things will continue. But to consider that in the 70s, people thought we would have artificially intelligent computers, before I was born, which is wild.
Well, I mean, people are I've always projected those kind of things. Where's my self-driving car? I mean, where's my flying car? Actually, for that matter, where's my flying car? But is that, like you said, what the regulatory guide rails isn't safe? I genuinely say to a lot of people here in the United States that I talk with, I think 75% of the United States population needs their driver's licenses revoked, because it's a dangerous world out there on the road. But we've all committed to this style of lifestyle, and so we're permitting that opportunity for danger to impact us.
Yeah, we have a daily danger opportunity when we drive, things like that. So in terms of the history, though, what's interesting to me when we looked into all of this excitement about artificial intelligence, is that after this comment that we were going to have artificially intelligent, robots within a decade, they call it an artificial intelligence winter. Like, we just stopped, and the question becomes,
strange.
Why did we stop? And we already kind of addressed that, which is the whole storage capacity. Like, people realize, well, we just need a lot more hard drive space than we can currently fit on it. Like, remember floppy disks? There are so many technologies that our kids are going to be like, what? But I remember floppy disks.
I mentioned some technology the other day to my kids and they were like, huh?
People did what? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, and so I guess that brings to mind today, like now me and you and others are saying, oh yeah, 10, 20 years, we're going to have artificially intelligent robots. But is that true, or will we go through another AI winter? And it's interesting to consider that, progress can be made and then it can take two steps back.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I really don't have an opinion on that particular thing. I think some of this, we are interested in this. Many people are curious to see what it's going to do. I think a lot of persons like ourselves are curious to see how it will help our workflows and help us accomplish tasks that we frankly don't want to do, right? And so how can we make our lives easier? And that's going to drive a lot of the need for AI and how we can incorporate it into our daily lives and into our work lives. I had a speaking engagement this week where one of the ladies was doing the same thing that I've told others with her research department where she works. She was using Midjourney to create images for an area to show what Washington, D.C. could look like without certain buildings and more park space and other things. And I was fascinated by what she said about it.
I like
so,
that.
What is AI going to allow us to accomplish in the future? And I think already we're seeing so many opportunities in the healthcare sphere where it's creating or understanding things that's one of the great things, and let me step back to that, is one of the great things that I think is going to be amazing is that we have a finite capacity. We can only keep things top of mind, so many things top of mind, where a computer, if it has its hard drive or whatever, has all of those data points at its fingertips and can look at them analytically without emotion, without other things, and come up with a better solution. And so we're already seeing that in the healthcare sphere where they're seeing the whole gamut of material that they need to understand a disease or a diagnosis, and then it can make it.
So that's interesting. And I think that the comparison of what a robot can do versus what a computer can do is important. So again, looking at our timeline, like 1997 is the first time that a computer beat like a chess grandmaster. So it's a really big deal, honestly.
Yeah.
And as a human, I think I've read that a human can only have like 7 things kind of top of mind before it starts to fall apart, right? Like we can only, our RAM only allows us to have 7 threads running at one time, right? And so, and then we have an interesting storage mechanism as well. And so when it comes to a computer, yeah, essentially today, I don't want to say infinite storage, but you can store a lot. Like you can store a lot on a computer. And then
you say that going back
concept. Go ahead.
Going back to a thing when beginning college, I had saved up a little bit of money and I was like going to buy the bleeding edge of technology computer that I could buy. And it had a 6 gigabyte hard drive, right? And I called our dad and I told him about it because I was so excited about it. And he's like, what are you going to do with that? You'll never fill the hard drive. And I was like, well, that's not the point, Dad. You don't fill the hard drive, but you use the space. I can fill 6 gigs like that today,
I know.
But you're right. The storage is there. We now have the capacity to provide that storage, and we're seeing partnerships with OpenAI and Microsoft and others, and Amazon, sharing that storage or creating that storage to allow for these computations to happen with these large language models.
Here's something that's interesting is, you and I talk a lot on this channel about ChatGPT. There was an interesting, but there are other large language models, and there was an interesting open source model that I've seen. I think it's out of, I want to say Saudi Arabia, but I think that's wrong. It's somewhere in the Middle East, but it's become open source. Like these scientists worked on it and they released it open source, and it's comparable to ChatGPT 3.5 in terms of its accuracy of responses. And one of the things they mentioned is that it took like 1/5 of the funding or something to create. which is wild. And you can download it to your computer. Now, figuring out how to run it, of course, if you're a computer programmer, then you know how to do that and you're set. But like the idea that you could download a large language model to your computer and just run it is kind of mind blowing. And if you consider that, like, ChatGPT currently is something that's online, but maybe, the standard computer comes with 10 terabytes and like it just, you load your own LLM and it becomes, you train it and customize it for your needs. That's amazing. I think that's within reach, like that's a doable thing.
Oh yeah, I think so as well. You talk about that, and our friend Lee Allen, he was sending me some text the other day about how he downloaded a large language model onto his Mac and was using it, and for things. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating, Lee. That's amazing. So we're already seeing that happen.
Yeah. So in terms of where we're at, so 1997, and then we've seen, that's when an artificial intelligence beat a chess grandmaster, right? And then we've seen a lot of advancements coming. You have a presentation, I know, that you've shared many times where you talk about how we've seen artificial intelligence and your Netflix movie selection and your texting predictions and those kinds of things. But today, where now we have ChatGPT and a plethora of tools being built off of what is essentially the next age of computing's gold mine, right?
It definitely
is. Which is what ChatGPT and OpenAI is doing. We're seeing a ton of tools and they're widely adopted. And so it seems strange to think that there could be an artificially intelligent, an AI winter, right? I don't foresee that. I guess weird things happen all the time.
I don't foresee that either.
But what does the future hold? What else is out there? The obvious applications are going to be robotics, science, medicine. Law is definitely out there, even though people are a little nervous. I think mental health is also one of those kind of more sensitive topics. But as you know, I run a law firm, and I have discovered ways that I can implement ChatGPT and custom GPTs in particular to do certain legal processes. And so I know that these things are coming. What do you see coming?
I see, like the article and other things that we've been researching for this, is that we're already seeing it impact so many aspects of our lives. And the funny thing is, and this is part of the presentation that I share, is that we've been quietly using AI for years. Like you said, with your Netflix selection, with our virtual assistants on our phones, where we can ask it a question, say, what's the circumference of the Earth? And it gives us that information. So I think for the future, I think we're going to see it continue to expand and grow. I think with the group in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, they're building on those building blocks that are already there, and we're going to see that exponentially expand. I've already seen a list, a visual representation of how many AI tools are out there, and it's going to just grow and expand. And I just shared a video with you about a personal pocket thing that I'm excited to try and use here in April when they release it. So it's going to get smaller, and it's going to be more readily available for everyone. That's what my prediction is, for sure.
Pretty crazy to think about all that could be happening and all that could be coming. I know that you and I are going to be working on custom GPTs that we've developed based on some prompts that we've been using. And so that's part of our future. And then I am curious to see what else happens. And of course, we're going to stick around here on the edge. And if you want to stay on the edge of it, like and subscribe, follow us. We're going to be talking about AI issues each week this year and more. And so this has been a great conversation. I don't know if we've covered in detail the history of AI, but we've done the contours.
We've done the contours, and I think we can share some links with other articles that we've got, and people can read up on some of this. It's fascinating how long the process has been with this, from the roots of our imagination.
Yeah, and I like that we started there as well. And I want to kind of end with this question, which is, we started off, can a machine think? And we said today maybe not, but tomorrow I think the answer is yes.
Yeah,
so
sometimes
pretty wild to think about.
Yep.
Thanks, bro. Take it easy.
Good to talk with you. Bye.